Hey folks, this is Yuri Kurosawa with Japan Ball. Interleague is well underway and we're getting closer to the halfway mark in the 2025 Nippon Professional Baseball season, so I thought now would be a good time to do another team power ranking. But before we begin, make sure to follow me on X at Yakult Cosmo for daily NPB news, highlights, and analysis, and subscribe to my weekly newsletter on japanball.com. So let's jump right in, beginning with the team at the very bottom. It's the Tokyo Yakult Swallows. They did just take 2 of 3 from SoftBank over the weekend at home, but they're 17-34-2 on the year. They are on pace to be worse than the Seibu Lions last year, just an abysmal run differential already at -82. And there just isn't much good to say about this team. They're dead last in OPS+, last in stolen bases, second to last in ERA+, second to last in defensive runs saved. So yeah, they're basically at the bottom of the league in just about everything. And yes, injuries play a big part of it. Munetaka Murakami has only played in 1 game. Yasutaka Shiomi has been missing the entire year. Tetsuro Yamada, he's always banged up these days, and even when he's healthy, he just doesn't look like the same guy anymore. Keiji Takahashi on the mound has been out for a bit. But that's just no excuse. You can't have a roster that's this top heavy and expect to compete when those superstars just aren't there right now. And the saddest thing is, with Murakami going to MLB in 2026, I think this is only a preview of how bad things might get for the Swallows over the next few seasons. They do have some exciting prospects: outfielder Ren Sawai, infielder Ryuji Ito, pitcher Yuto Nakamura, just to name a few. But this is clearly the worst team in NPB right now. Next at number 11, it is the Chiba Lotte Marines. A very disappointing season for them so far, with a 19-34 record, which is not all that much better than the Swallows. And much like the Swallows, they're basically bottom 3 in NPB in just about every meaningful category. So I don't think this is particularly salvageable for them. One of the biggest indicators, I think, of how far this team has fallen is that they were 21-4 in head-to-head matchups against Seibu last year. So just using that team as a punching bag, they were really bad last year. So just doing what they're supposed to do, beating up on a bad team. But this year, Seibu is much better, and they're actually only 4-6 against them, on top of having a losing record against literally every other team in the league. So, pretty straightforward that they're not good enough this year. The biggest reason probably is that the foreign duo of Neftali Soto and Gregory Polanco, who accounted for so much of their production in the power department in the past, they've quite frankly been terrible this year, and they just don't have the domestic talent to make up for it. Kyota Fujiwara and Yudai Fujioka are solid. Daito Yamamoto and Raito Ikeda, 2 of their top prospects, they're starting to get more comfortable at the NPB level, which is great to see. Those guys are going to be a huge part of their future. So positive takeaways there, but it's just been rough overall. And then with the pitching, they lost Roki Sasaki and CC Mercedes over the offseason. That's already a lot of innings out the door. But then their ace, Atsuki Taneichi, he just has not been himself so far in 2025. Very disappointing. And, they have some others like Haruya Tanaka, who's breaking out in a big way. And new foreigner Austin Voth has been very good. So there's 2 positives there. And then Kazuya Ojima, still a fairly reliable innings eater, but that just isn't good enough. Bullpen has also regressed, and yeah, that's why this team is last place in the Pacific. Moving on to number 10, we have the Chunichi Dragons, a perennial bottom feeder over the past decade or so. And things do not look all that different this year, although they do have more talent on the roster now, in my opinion, than years past. So they honestly should be able to compete, but this team just struggles so much to do the little things. They make so many mistakes. Their management, no matter how many changes they make, just does not want to shake things up in any meaningful way. And I think they hold back the players, honestly. They had a game last month where they made every single out of the 9th inning on a bunt. And this is just so memorable to me because the first out was on a failed bunt for a hit. And then the second out was on a sacrifice bunt. And then the third out was on a very inexplicable squeeze attempt with the bases loaded and already 2 outs. I don't know if they forgot how many outs there were, but either way, that sort of thing over the years, it just has not been a major surprise with this franchise. They just always do so many things that'll leave you scratching your head, not even giving themselves a chance to win, really, in those types of situations. I wish they would give more playing time to guys like Kenta Bright or Kosuke Ukai, who, have so much potential and you could develop them, but they don't. Seiji Uebayashi, the former SoftBank Hawk, has been a bright spot for the offense. He has bounced back, double-digit homers and steals almost very early in the season, so he might finish as close to like a 2020 player with a 145 OPS plus. Yuki Okabayashi, the speedster, also back to being a batting title contender, which is good because he was not good in 2024. And they've got some solid arms as well, even with ace Hirota Takahashi taking a step back this year. Takahiro Matsuba is giving them good innings. Yudai Ono, Hideaki Wakui, the veterans kind of having bounce backs. Yumito Kanemaru is living up to the hype. Shinya Matsuyama out of the pen is an absolute beast, making up for the loss of Rydell Martinez. But they do lack a bit in the way of depth. And again, I just don't think this team is capable of maximizing its potential, even if they have a decent amount of talent on the roster. Number 9, it's the Rakuten Eagles. And with Rakuten, it's pretty simple. You cannot be a consistent team in this low-scoring era with such little pitching depth. Their ERA plus is 8th in NPB, which isn't that bad, but they are way at the bottom in terms of FIP minus, XFIP minus, K minus BB percent, two or three strong indicators of future success. They are dead last in all of those. Ace Takahisa Hayakawa always gives you a chance to win, but then it's just question mark after question mark. Seiryu Uchi, Masaru Fuji, they're doing a fine job right now, but their peripheral numbers don't back that up, so they might regress. They got some veterans like Takayuki Kishi and Ryota Takinaka who just don't have anything left in the tank. Spencer Howard and Miguel Yahure, the two foreigners, they've looked good, but they haven't made that many starts yet. And their bullpen is also fairly mediocre. I mean, it's not bad, but Takahiro Norimoto lost the closer job. Sora Suzuki is doing okay filling in. Shoma Fujihira, the big setup man, has been struggling to keep the ball in the yard this year. So a lot rides on this offense to win them games, and it just isn't all that inspiring. New manager Hajime Miki, he is having them run the bases like crazy. I think they're a fun team to watch because of that. They're number 1 in NPB with 55 swipes. That's their strength for sure. All these guys like Hiroto Kobukata, Ryosuke Tatsumi, Daisuke Nakashima, Itsuki Murabayashi, Yuya Ogo, Rei Muneyama, they're plus base runners. So they can be kind of feisty in that way. But in terms of actual hitting, Hideto Asamura and Toshiki Abe, they provide some pop. But that's pretty much it. Still waiting on Yumi Yasuda to come back. Murabayashi has actually been hitting very well this year. I think it's good for him to move off shortstop. But then others like Tatsumi and Ogo, who were very good last year, they've regressed. So basically cancels out. And I think Muneyama is having a very adequate rookie season, close to league average with a stick in his hands, excellent shortstop defense. He is on pace for over 3 WAR. So I am glad to see him fitting right in. But, overall, Rakuten, they're just a very flawed team. Next up, it's the Saitama Seibu Lions, and I do want to make clear that I think there's a pretty significant gap between Rakuten at 9 and Seibu at 8, but these next few teams are actually kind of bunched up together, and what a turnaround it's been from last year for Seibu. They're not anything close to a complete team yet, in my opinion, but this is just such a better team. The offense is still quite lackluster, even with rookie Seiya Watanabe hitting so well. It's a team OPS plus a 94, which isn't great. They just don't have much in the way of like a reliable middle of the order bat. Manaya Nishikawa has been awesome on both sides of the ball. Good table setter. Tyler Nevin is playing very well. Sosuke Genda always gives you the defense. And old man Takeya Nakamura is inching closer to 500 dingers. But I think the big question for the rest of the season for me is whether or not someone like Leandro Cedeno can get activated. Because if he hits like he did with Orix down the stretch, I'm talking like a 120, 130 OPS plus with 15 to 20 homers, that already changes the complexion of this lineup big time with more pop. They got some other guys like Daiju Nomura who can maybe make an impact. But the story with this team right now, it's not the hitting. It's the two starters at the top, Tatsuya Imai and Chihiro Sumida. That's the best 1-2 punch in NPB. A 1.30 ERA with a 28% K rate for Imai, a 1.04 with a 23% K rate for Sumida. And look, I think, Yutaro Watanabe, Shinya Sugai, Kona Takahashi, these guys are not bad, but it's really Imai and Sumida that's carried this team. And hopefully once reigning Rookie of the Year Netsuki Takeuchi is back at 100%, because he hasn't quite looked like himself yet, then they have themselves a really, really nice front three. Bullpen is also much improved thanks to Kaimataira, Trey Wingenter, and Hiroshi Kaino all being, locked down late game options who throw gas. Rookie Haruto Yamada has also been pretty good. Others, not too notable, but I think they have enough there. And yeah, I just think the vibes are so much better with this group than last year. At number 7, it's the Orix Buffaloes. Orix just hasn't been playing the best baseball ever since their 11-3 start. They're now pretty much a 500 ball club at 27-25. Just got swept in pretty convincing fashion as well in the Kansai Derby. And the team's biggest strength over the past half decade, which has been their pitching, has seemingly evaporated. They actually have the worst ERA plus in NPB all of a sudden at 82, which just doesn't make much sense. Now, do I believe that's their true talent level? Absolutely not. I think they're so much better than that, and their underlying numbers are basically league average. So they're definitely underperforming, and I think the reason for that is that they play really bad defense. So the bad fielding really makes the run prevention look poor. But even just like looking at the guys in the rotation right now, it's not nearly as potent as I want it to be. Like Hiroya Miyagi is obviously still one of, if not the best pitcher in NPB. Alan Curry from Hiroshima has been a nice pickup, eating a lot of innings for them. But then, Ryuhei Sotani hasn't quite looked as good as he did last year. Anderson Espinoza and Daiki Tajima, those guys are fine. But then they kind of run out of depth after that. So they really need Shunpei Yamashita to come back and form that 1-2 punch again with Miyagi. And it does help that they finally got Taisuke Yamaoka back after his gambling scandal. But they have a lot of injuries in the bullpen, and you can tell it's starting to have a ripple effect on a lot of the guys who are looking a bit overworked. So yeah, I think their depth is just nowhere near what it used to be. Their hitting, though, has took a 180 from last year when they were really, really bad. They actually lead NPB with a staggering 118 OPS plus. Granted, a lot of that is carried by like the first 3 weeks of the season when they had like a 160 OPS plus, but still they've been, totally fine over the past month or two. Ryo Ota is blossoming into a superstar at second base. Yutaro Sugimoto, Yuma Tongu, Kotaro Korebayashi, Roman Ichikawa, Teita Nakagawa, all these guys who kind of were very disappointing last year, they're bouncing back nicely. And Tomoya Mori, the big catcher star, has just recently returned. So it's a nice deep lineup, and I think eventually you will see the pitching normalize a bit, and that will help them stay competitive for a playoff spot. Mamoru Kishida, I think, doing a decent job as manager, but yeah, I want to see them kind of, right the ship because they haven't looked all that great over the past few weeks. Next, it's the Hiroshima Carp, and the Carp find themselves here thanks to elite pitching and defense, really. They're number 1 in FIP minus, and they're top 3 in basically all the other pitching/defensive stats. So definitely among the best at keeping runs off the board. Problem is, they don't really score a lot either. Bottom 3 in home runs and steals, OPS plus of 98, which is a bit below average. And if you look at the hitters they have, it's honestly not that bad. It's a lot better than I expected it to be before the year, but they don't have that big superstar slugger like a Teruraki Sato or a Kazuma Okamoto or a Shugo Maki. The guy that even when the whole team is slumping is going to be able to put one over the fence and win you games. They don't have that. However, Shogo Sakakura has been hitting like a star ever since he returned from injury. 300 average, 147 OPS plus for him. Shota Suikane is breaking out with a 132 OPS plus, much better plate skills than we've seen in the past. He also leads the team with 35 ribbies. And first-year foreigner, Sandro Fabian, has actually been fantastic. He's hitting 306 with 6 homers and a 139 OPS plus. So already there you have 3+ bats in the lineup you can bank on for, I think, the remainder of the year. And then you add to that, veteran Shogo Akiyama, who recently came back. Elaris Montero, another new import, has actually been holding his own so far. And he just can be kind of like what a Matt Davidson did for them last year or a couple years ago towards the back of the lineup, just giving them some power. Kaito Kozono has really cooled off after a hot start. Like, he was their best hitter for the first 3 weeks. Not so good in May and June so far, but I think it's fine. This is a lineup that doesn't have a super high ceiling, but in terms of maintaining a decent floor, it should be okay. And really, if their pitching staff is really this good, an average or even slightly below average lineup is fine. And they're currently very relevant. 28, 25-2 record. They're, still in the playoff picture. And it's the pitching that really stands out. Masato Morishita, Hiroki Tokoda, Daichi Osura, that's a nice front three in the rotation. They don't really have big strikeout stuff, but they're very reliable, and obviously the great defense helps them. Shohei Mori and Shogo Tamamura, I think, are very solid 4 and 5. And the bullpen is really, really good. Best strikeout rate in NPB at 25%. The one thing to note with the Carp is that they're 19 and 8 at home, but only 9 and 17 on the road. So definitely quite a different team depending on where they're playing. But, they're a formidable opponent nonetheless, and Takahiro Arai is just a great manager. Entering the top 5 now, we got the Yomiuri Giants, a team that's been quite streaky this year. They kind of fake me out sometimes and make me think like, oh, this team's completely done. And then they come back and it's like, wow, they might win the pennant. And like Hiroshima, they are significantly better at home. But if you look at the numbers overall, they're doing quite well across the board. ERA plus is above average. They have the best K-minus BB percent in all of NPB. OPS plus above average. They lead the Central in homers. The defense, especially in the outfield, is pretty bad, but otherwise, I think it's actually a pretty solid ball club. But the issue is that their superstar, their aircraft carrier, Kazuma Okamoto, he has been out with an injury and likely is not going to be coming back for like another 2 months or so. They traded for Richard Sunagawa from SoftBank, hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. He hasn't done all that much, and so I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge to stay afloat until Okamoto returns because he is just such a big part of this offense. Hayato Sakamoto is also completely washed now, sadly. But at least Yoshihiro Maru is back now, so, that will hopefully help lengthen this lineup. And then the pitching, even with Shosei Togo, the ace, struggling, it looks good. Thanks to Foster Griffin, Haruto Inoue, Irori Yamasaki, Yuji Akahoshi, those guys are holding down the fort. So eventually when Togo, gets back to that level that we expect from him, they got a really nice rotation. Bullpen is obviously sick as well, spearheaded by Taisei and Rydel Martinez. So Yomiuri, I don't think they're going to repeat as pennant winners. They don't look, nearly as stable as they did in 2024, but still in a pretty good position to make the playoffs. Next up, it's the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks. Yes, they've been disappointing. Yes, a lot of people have always been praying for this team's downfall, but I'm going to do some homerism for this team for a second and just say that I think it's remarkable how they've managed to get back above 500 this year with all the injuries they've had. At one point, they were missing like 7 out of the 9 position players from their opening day lineup, and now, finally, they're starting to get healthy again, and so really good job by some of those, guys on the back end of the roster to make sure they didn't fall too far behind in the standings. That's been a big strength for this team. They obviously have great development, and they have a lot of big-time prospects who I still think have a lot more to offer. We just haven't seen it yet, like with Yoshiyasu Sasagawa or Naoki Sato or, even Yuto Akihiro, who they traded from Yomiuri with Sunagawa. But now they have, Kensuke Kondo's back. He came back a lot sooner than many of us expected. And some of the other guys like Roya Kurihara, who were out to begin the year, Kenta Imamiya, they're also healthy now. So I think they're going to be dangerous again. The catching situation without Taki Akai is still a little bit awkward. That's probably having a domino effect on making the pitching worse as well without that stability behind the plate. But I think they're making it work well enough. Otherwise, eventually, once they get back to 100% with like Yuki Yanagita in there, then I think they're going to be completely cooking because Kondo, Kenta Imamiya, Roya Kurihara, Hotaka Yamakawa, you add to that Isami Nomura rocking a 905 OPS and a 180 OPS plus right now while playing multiple positions. They are still stacked in the lineup. Oh, and I almost forgot Tatsuru Yanagimachi in the outfield. He's stepped up big time in the place of Tomoya Masaki, hitting like one of the best hitters in all of Japan. And the pitching after a brutal start has slowly but surely improved. Levon Moinello, that guy is an absolute monster. 18 strikeouts the other day, a new franchise record. So, already you have yourself a true ace. And then the number 2, already it's getting a little bit questionable, but Kohei Arihara, he is starting to calm down after the really rough start. Tomohisa Ozeki, Naoyuki Uwasawa, those guys are all right. And then I just think a bunch of these younger guys like Jun Maeda, Yugo Maeda, Haru Matsumoto, they're going to be huge for them going forward. So, we'll see what happens with Carter Stewart Jr. and his injury. And also I should mention Roberto Osuna, a complete liability at closer, a complete liability. So they have to give that job to somebody else eventually. But yeah, SoftBank still very legit in my opinion. Now into the top 3, and we start with the defending champion, Yokohama DeNA BayStars. Now, they had a slow start this year, but they're back. 7 games over 500, and a plus 44 run differential is second best in all of NPB. We know what this lineup is capable of, right? They showed it in the postseason last year. When they got hot, there aren't many teams that can stop them. And in the beginning of the season, they had injuries, they had underperformance. They just didn't look like themselves. They were actually towards the bottom of the league in terms of OPS. But they have the best OPS in the league now over the past month, and they're overall above average with a 104 OPS plus on the year, thanks to guys like Shugo Maki being a top 2 to 3 hitter in NPB. Toshiro Miyazaki and Ryuki Watarai are getting hot. Shion Matsu and Yudai Yamamoto might be, the best catching tandem in the game. And Tyler Austin, who led the league in hitting last year, hasn't even been activated yet. He's actually been below average so far by OPS plus, and I don't expect that to last for long. So the offense is just super explosive, and then the rotation has a ton of stability. Now that, Katsuki Azuma's at the top, plus they have 3 foreigners in Anthony Kay, Andre Jackson, and Trevor Bauer. Kay actually leads the CL in ERA right now. The amount of innings they get from those 4 alone is crazy. And I think it helps prop up the bullpen a bit, because it keeps them fresh. Since these guys can all give you 7-8 innings every time out. Yutaru Ishida and Shinichi Onuki aren't too shabby for a 5 or 6 either. So to me, this is just a much more complete pitching staff than last year when they won it all. And they do have other issues like defensively and with injuries. But at the end of the day, if you have this much firepower in the lineup and this much stability in the rotation, you're probably one of the Japan Series favorites again. I love the addition of Masaki Mimori over the winter as well. Really good utility man and glue guy. Number 2, the current PL pennant leaders, Hokkaido Nippon-Ham Fighters. And to me, this team is almost like the better version of the BayStars, dare I say. Like, they have crazy lineup depth and more power than any team in NPB. Their team ISO is 127, and the next best team is Orix at 109. Chusei Manami and Framil Reyes are both looking like 30-plus homer bats. And then you add to that the fact that Yuki Nomura has been one of the best all-around hitters in NPB. Kotaro Kiyomiya is not quite in his best form yet, but always has that explosiveness to him, like we saw in the second half last year. Yuya Gunji has always been delivering in the clutch. He already has multiple walk-offs this year. Tatsuki Mizuno has been one of the better shortstops in the league. They just have so many guys that can hit, and not only hit, but hit for power, which is very rare in this dead ball era. Didn't even mention Shun Mizutani. And then their pitching is in a really good place, like Hiromi Ito, Shoma Kanemura, Takayuki Kato, Sachiya Yamasaki, Koki Kitayama, Kota Tatsu, Ruyan Gulin before he got hurt. That's like 7 starters who can go at least 6 every time out. And you have a good mix of power pitchers with Kitayama and Ito, as well as the finesse guys like Yamasaki and Kato. So, the bullpen, on the other hand, that's not quite up to snuff, I think, for a team of this caliber. I don't really trust any of those guys in the long term. Like, they're all either throw hard and can get strikeouts, but they don't have much command, or it's the other way around. Like, they don't have great stuff, but they, can throw strikes. They risk getting crushed, though. So it's not ideal, but there's a reason they have a league best 120 ERA plus, and that's because that rotation is just so deep. So to me, they are the favorites to win the Pacific League. And now the number 1 team in NPB right now, the Hanshin Tigers. I think they're the team to beat in 2025. I actually did a longer breakdown on them over on my Patreon, patreon.com/baseballcosmo if you're interested. But to summarize, their pitching is ridiculously stacked. And then they have a human cheat code in the lineup named Teruaki Sato. just blowing away the competition with a 205 OPS plus and 17 bombs on the year. He's on pace for over 40. Their entire 1 through 5 in the order, though, is really good, honestly. Like Koji Chikamoto and Takuma Nakano are on-base machines, great table setters, and then Shota Morishita and Sato just have big-time pop. One of the best, slugging duos in baseball. And then Yusuke Oyama can add a little something, too, even if he's not quite at the level he was in 2023 when they won it all. And yes, they do have some holes, like, shortstop for them is very weak. But they have so much stability elsewhere that I think it works out. Good defensively, too, especially at the key positions like catcher, second base, and center field. And then their rotation, man. Shoki Murakami is back to MVP form. Hiroto Saiki, I don't think he is even at 100% right now, but he still has a sub-2 ERA. John Duplantier leads the league in K rate. Good luck if you're up against any of those guys in a series. And then Takato Ihara, the rookie, he's had an incredible start to his career. I liked him in the draft last year, but didn't think he'd be quite this good right out of corporate ball. The back end guys in the rotation like Otake are fine, but just wait until Haruto Takahashi comes back, and then they might genuinely have like 4 top 10 to top 15 starters in the same rotation, and that's when they're really lethal. I think Hyuji Fujikawa coming in is doing a really good job of blending kind of like the old school and the new school elements of managing. Bullpen, I think he manages it very well. It's been exceptional so far this year, and it might even get better once a few of these guys come back from injury, but it is already good to see Atsuki Yuasa back after he's been out for like multiple seasons, and I'm praying for Daichi Ishii after he got hit by a comebacker on the head the other day. But yeah, Hanshin Tigers to me are now the Japan Series favorites, but that just about does it. There are my current power rankings as of the night of June 9th when I'm recording this. Let me know what you guys think about any of these teams in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe for more NPB content in English.